3, 2, 1. Yeah. All right. We got it out of the system.
No garlic.
No garlic.
No 9/11.
No sardines. No, yeah. What are we going to talk about?
That's a good question. I don't know, you're the host.
Mike close. Mike close.
Okay.
All right. We'll start. Hello, welcome back to another episode of Culture Bytes. I am host Jordan Robinson, and I come from Ahousa and Heshquat nations on Vancouver Island and New Channel territories. And I am one of the hosts and graphics and production specialist of the Indigenous Youth Wellness team. And today I have the privilege of chatting with our good friend here. I'll allow you to introduce yourself as comfortably as you feel.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Ambrose Williams. I'm from the Gitxsan Nation, former youth in care and a student at BCIT with the Business Administration program. My background is in political advocacy, specifically for off-reserve representation here in Vancouver. I grew up in this neighborhood, East Vancouver, which is probably one of the largest off-reserve populations for First Nations people in BC.
Mm-hmm. How often do you get to go home to your home nation? Like, how did your family do trips every summer or anything like that?
Yeah, when I was much younger, my grandparents were really into feast culture.
Yeah.
And for ourselves, ceremony is in the feast hall. And you mentioned before, it was very similar to a potlatch.
Yeah.
From where you're from.
Yeah.
And our ceremony has to do with the stories and how they're told and how you're witnessing what you see. And you're basically carrying forward that story into the future for future generations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So kind of a big question out the gates, I guess, is how did it feel growing up in kind of like an urban center like Vancouver? You're pretty familiar with it. You know all the landmarks and all the places to go, but as an Indigenous person in an urban center, I feel like it's kind of a different upbringing. How would you?
Yeah, it was like night and day for myself. So, yeah, when I was much younger, I used to go back a lot for summers and winters. I remember the first time I picked up a knife and butchered a moose. Mm-hmm. But then coming back to the city, it felt like a weird juxtaposition. So it's like I didn't feel quite like on reserve or quite in the city. You know, it was somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, it feels like sometimes the borders can get pushed a little further and further. Like, I grew up in a small town, but even then, that's kind of off reserve, and you could kind of feel the stark differences between going back home. I grew up in a small town, Port Alberni on the island, which there's Native kids everywhere there. Like, I grew up seeing faces that looked like my own and cousins and everything, but even the town is quite different than any reserve in Canada. Like, it's quite a unique experience. And some people would even say a place like Vancouver isn't a full city, but man, the Indigenous population here is fantastically, like, one of the biggest. Surrey as well, which is also connected to the Lower Mainland, was on trajectory for one of the biggest Indigenous youth populations. Yeah. So here in the Lower Mainland, we're a host to a lot of Indigenous cultures. It goes out far out east, all the way here.
Definitely.
Yeah, so did you encounter like a lot of other Indigenous cultures?
Yeah, like I mentioned before, I was a political advocate. So a lot of my work had to do with looking at the population. So I was a youth advocate, advocating for youth issues 15, 20 years ago. And as you mentioned, like this neighborhood, there's about 50,000 Aboriginals, and a lot of it's by design. We're in the poorest neighborhood in the city. I mean, in every direction you look, it's you have projects or you have Aboriginal buildings, or you have the Friendship Center down the street, and it's just like, yeah, it just seems to be where a lot of people gathered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems to create like a like not only is Vancouver a kind of a cultural melting pot as is, but the amount of indigenous cultures here too. It's kind of like a umbrella term to say indigenous, but man, you got so many like powwow dancers and people from far out east, Cree and Anishinaabe, like even from America.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it creates this really unique blend that might be unlike any other magnet that is an urban center for indigenous people.
Yeah.
So when you did political advocacy, what does that kind of entail? Like what would you do for your people?
Yeah, so a lot of it had to do with working within governance circles. So, what I mean by that, like if you think about politics, politics is essentially advocating for issues that you believe really strongly in, and being able to push it forward with facts, and being able to kind of stick to that script, even if you're the only one in the room. And a lot of the circles I was in were like City of Vancouver, the Parks Board, was working in federal and provincial advocacy circles, like with the government. And it can feel like you're banging your head against the wall sometimes, just because it's one thing to speak to an issue, but actually having someone implement it takes a lot of effort. So one of the big things that came up, I helped develop a program. Actually started at Gathering Our Voices, which was really cool. I went to, I think it was the Nanaimo about 20 years ago. They had it in Nanaimo. And I just was walking around, visiting booths, checking things out. And there was one program in particular. It was called the Gen 7. It was sports advocacy. So the whole idea was like, you bring in some trainers. They teach the youth how to essentially be sports trainers, and they go out into the community and create Gen 7 messengers is what they called it.
Okay.
And we expanded it. We ended up stepping away from Gen 7 and then reintroducing it under the City of Vancouver banner. And we ended up in 6 community centers.
Yeah.
Called RISE, Responsible Indigenous Strategic Education, I think it was.
Wow, that's fantastic.
But that took like 10 years. 10 years of like walking in circles, just trying to like push the issue like, hey, we need more representation.
Yeah.
And so what I mean by that is, you think about boards of directors, you think of anywhere where decisions are made.
Yeah.
And it's just trying to get into those kind of circles.
It seems that no matter like what climate you're in, approval is as slow as molasses, kind of.
And funding.
Yeah,
And funding dollars.
Oh man. So in your line of political advocacy, you said?
Yeah.
What are some teachings you kind of pulled away from that for yourself as learning how to kind of not speak for, but would you say it's speaking for, or would you say it's kind of representing?
Yeah, I always struggle with this internally because I can never. It's not that I don't believe in the issue. It's I sometimes come across that person within an audience being like, "So who gave you that authority to speak on this issue?" And like it's not that I don't believe in the cause, because if you look at like any of the statistics, like we're overrepresented in pretty much every negative category you can look at, right? Like whether it's incarceration rates, youth and care, education, we're well below the median.
No.
And so, especially if you look back historically, being the inconvenient Indian isn't quite, what's the word? Kosher.
Yeah.
Like people would rather kind of check a box and just be like, yeah, like, we consulted, we have our Indigenous person here, but that's about the extent of the action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always pretty tricky. I had in my family members, some did like medical advocacy and things like that. And one thing I think a lot of people should know is you can have people talk and represent what you need. As you said, like sometimes if you're trying to speak up for something or get something taken care of, it can feel like hitting your head on a wall. But you could also have an advocate come and help you out, and because you said hammer home the points, hammer home the
Definitely.
facts, because it can get a lot of bureaucratic and red tape. But I hope some young people know that they can receive this type of help. Maybe not in every location or every res or every town, but it is an option that is usually available to some extent, even if it's a family member that
Yeah.
has some knowledge on things like that.
I think the way that I approach it is I always try to speak from what I can see or have
Yeah,
witnessed.
yeah,
And I think that ties back a lot to my culture,
yeah,
growing up in the feast hall, because
yeah,
that has a lot to do with witnessing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Witnesses are a huge part of whether feast hall, longhouse, powwow, potlatch. Witnesses are kind of an important role in community, and if somebody asks you to be a witness, it could be a very big deal because you kind of need to recount what you experienced or what you saw.
Yeah.
If anybody asks you, and I think this is a safe practice for any world you're kind of entering, to have somebody kind of be there and be able to say, because people have had stories outright rejected, and people have been rejected for many things that were important. And if you just had somebody there to witness you and view the difficulties you're facing,
Yeah.
it could change a few of your outcomes.
Definitely. And
Yeah.
even just going back to the cultural piece, even just the act of witnessing, like the more times that you're held up in the community, at
Yeah.
least where I'm from,
Yeah.
your name gets bigger, right?
Yeah.
So it's like the more people witness, the more like community acceptance you get
Yeah.
essentially, and yeah, you kind of build your name up that way.
So, I guess a big question of mine is, how does this how does this bring your, like, all this work experience that you have, and you're currently doing schooling post-secondary, and it can be pretty intensive. How does this merge with your identity, that as Gitxsan, as Indigenous, as Ambrose? How does this kind of formulate?
Yeah, that's a great question, because for myself, identity has been a tricky road because I grew up as a former youth in care. That's how I'm back in school. I'm on the tuition waiver program, which opened up a lot of doors. I mean, it's a free pass to education to pretty much any post secondary
Oh, okay.
under undergrad. So I've been making the most of that. But when I think about identity, I always think about culture and place. And kind of what I mean by that is, so like when you think of your like stereotypical Indian or a powwow or a feast or anything, like you think of Indian, you think of like drumming or dancing, or that you got that prototypical
Yeah.
like Indian image. And yeah, like that's a really strong anchor, like that's a strong tie to our past. But our culture kind of looks to the future also. And it can change and adapt, based on like what tools we pick up, what lessons we learned, what environments we grew up in. And that's what I'm seeing really here, like in Vancouver, because we're almost 2 or 3 generations deep of like people living off reserve here, and like whole families who probably have never seen their reserve, right, or grew up on the land. So what does that mean to their culture? So yeah, it's a deep topic. And what I mean, like culture and place. So place being like your reserve,
Yep.
or off reserve, right? So I don't think there's a right answer to that.
It is a big question. I wasn't hoping that you'd clarify everything just yet. But what I do appreciate is your outlook on these things. So when did you handle mostly like Indigenous topics when you would go advocate for?
Yeah, so mostly a lot of the things I was working on was program advocacy,
Yeah.
especially for youth.
Yeah.
First, it was youth in care, and then moved towards the program Rise Alive.
Yeah.
And then I got more into helping the nuts and bolts, the
Yeah.
governance side. So moving towards like board of directors after that.
Yeah. And that one is where it gets pretty intensive.
It can.
Yeah, because the only thing, it wasn't a worry of ours, but like I constantly use the word jargon, but like there's just a lot of language that not everybody speaks
Yeah.
when it comes to tackling like governance or programs or like advocating and fighting for certain rights or even learning about it to read any constitutional paper or any rights paper or any articles. It takes a lot of brain power when you speak this language. How did you kind of approach learning this?
Yeah, I think one of the first moments where it really was apparent to me was watching Oka
Yeah.
on TV in
Yeah.
'94.
Yeah.
And that was the first time that I actually saw First Nations people standing up for their their rights and trying to assert title to territory.
Wow.
And then growing up, being Gitxsan, realizing that title is collective and it's for the benefit of everybody and everybody has a say, right? So looking at it from that lens, I could see that there was two laws on this one land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Where you got like in First Nations, Indigenous, and then you
Yeah.
got the Crown, right?
Yeah, because there's multiple, like an entire spectrum of levels to identity, and like it's also the ones where you introduce yourself, you use your language, and it's where you're from, like as you said, place, and but then also there's this layer that you get to where it's the kind of legal side of it, and that gets really complicated because it's from a different lifetime that we like. It's hard to comprehend.
Yeah, and a lot of that's by design.
Yeah.
When, like I mentioned, I was Gitxsan,
Yeah.
and so my great grandfather was actually writing letters to the Crown. So that was one of the first court cases I ever heard about.
Yeah.
Was the Delgamuukw Gasteway. And yeah, like I mentioned before, that was one of the first title cases that proved. We're talking about Aboriginal title, and you might have heard it recently with the Cowichan decision.
Yes.
Yeah, or the Chilcotin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In 2025, there was a large case that kind of, we'll say, rustled quite a few feathers in the nicest way we could put it.
Yeah.
It's very controversial, depending on who you talk to, and it's kind of a big deal in this political climate of identity and land titles and things like that.
Yeah, like I would say that it's a big deal, but then also it's not something that's been off the radar.
Yeah.
Yeah, because these court cases have started essentially in since the Constitution was amended in '82.
Yeah.
That was kind of the first turning point.
Yeah.
And then so from there we got Section 35, which basically affirmed our rights.
Yeah.
And at this point, this directly applies to all First Nations, Inuit, Métis.
Yeah.
And basically it says it's not a inherent right to self-government, but
Yeah.
that's essentially what it starts stating. It's the framework, it's the basis of
Yeah.
all the other decisions.
Yeah, these, like, the only thing I keep kind of circling in my head is it does feel like super complicated at times to like cases and monumental cases and
Yeah.
all these battles, but these are kind of tied to identity as well. Not kind of, within legalities of being a member of Canada, having social security number and all those things,
Yeah.
which a lot of people want to resist.
Yeah.
But this still kind of formulates treatment as a citizen. I don't know how to word that properly.
Yeah, like I think going back to that, the two laws, one land,
Yeah.
right? So you got your indigenous law,
Yeah.
where you're from. You mentioned your health sec. You've
Yeah.
got your own feast hall. You've got your own governance, your own language. And like myself, I'm Gitxsan. So there's a way of operating that we've had before, where it's like nation to nation, right?
Yeah.
Like we had our welcoming protocols,
Yeah.
and all that other stuff,
Yeah.
how we related to one another. But this relationship to the crown, that's nation to nation.
Yeah.
That's kind of the basis of it, because these treaties pre-existed before the Constitution Amendment.
Yeah.
And the basis of any treaty, it's a nation to nation agreement. So that's affirming that we're two sovereign entities.
Okay. And what's the kind of simplest way to explain sovereign entities? Would you be able to expand upon that? Or?
Yeah, like even if we look back at something as simple as the two-road wampum,
Yeah.
that was from the Iroquois Confederacy.
Yeah.
That's essentially, it was a beaded lanyard with two lines, two
Yeah.
rivers essentially, and that represented that there was essentially two boats, right? The First Nations and then the colonial, and they didn't interfere with each other. They existed together.
Yeah. Simultaneously, linear. So like, what like there's I feel like there's a certain base level of understanding we kind of need to reach to exist within the confines that is a country like Canada or USA, North America. And it can get a little trickier or complicated to understand, like especially since we don't have the best relationship with Canada. And so what feels important in terms of rights, especially for Indigenous people, to you and to youth, because there's going to be a lot of young people who have not only tools but just things that they could kind of keep in their pocket. What's something they should carry with them that is knowledge, especially in this what could be viewed as by some as a colonial education system or something like that. What are some things that we could take from Indigenous rights or civil advocacy or anything like that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think where it can get really complicated if you look at the court cases individually, because most of them are about like 400, 500 pages long.
Yeah.
Like the decisions, and they're long reads. But the important thing to remember is that it's incremental change. So if you look at even just the different staggering, so every nation is kind of building off the next argument, right?
Yeah.
And so you look at the starting point, which, we have the Constitution in 82, then we moved to Calder. Calder was the Nishka that affirmed that Aboriginal title existed. And then we moved on towards Sparrow. Sparrow was Musqueam here, around fishing rights. And I had to deal with that your rights were not extinguished if you left the reservation for fishing, and you could feed your family, right?
Wow.
It seems like such a small thing.
Yeah, but it's huge.
It was massive back then.
Yeah. Because to understand that even within the last few generations, human rights were even stripped from any of the Indigenous peoples, meaning like if you were somewhere that was outside of your reservation, you could be hassled, you could be arrested, there's many negative things about the past that
Definitely.
Yeah.
And you needed like a pass at one point.
Yeah.
Like an actual, like a pass from the Indian agent to go off the reservation.
I remember reading history, and it's shocking. Like today, it could feel something that's almost unreal, but it definitely isn't. That you required permission to leave your reserve, or even at times your status would be ripped away.
Yeah.
And the status it's important. It's another part of identity now, but it could also be like back then it could have just been handcuffs of another sense.
Yeah.
Because it could be, if something's held over your head that could be taken away at any moment, then what's the point of dangling the carrot? Like, it's a tricky thing, especially when it comes to status, because that has roots in like many relationship problems between First Nations and Canada.
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not many people that have had a number attached to them. Like, I'm pretty sure Germany
Yeah.
had something similar.
Yeah,
You
there's
know?
quite a few maybe the term fascist states or anything like that that really just kind of it dehumanizes.
Yeah.
And a lot of what I have gathered from reading some history on is a lot of this was battling just to get our basic human rights back. And now, so maybe is it okay to say where we're at today, especially with the new generations who are supposed to learn more than us, are building off of that to like something more? Because we requested to be treated as equals and be part of things and not be like it was a constant battle between racism and acceptance and many things, but now there's almost a new platform that all these court cases have led up
Yeah.
to where it's you can expand upon that now.
Yeah. So we're kind of at a weird inflection point now, especially more recently with the Gitxala.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard of that before. It was in December.
Yeah.
It's really recent. So the main fight around this was around free, prior, informed consent.
Yeah.
Which is a huge deal when it comes to like major infrastructure projects. During our discussion, we talked about pipelines, or
Yeah.
it could be LNG, it could be any number of projects.
Yeah.
But it all comes down to who gets to make decisions on our territories,
Yeah.
and whether it's on reserve, off reserve. I mean, you look at our statistics, and 60% of us live off reserve.
Yeah.
And you look at even just within that 60%, probably most of those people are like under the age of 22 right now.
So there's a
'Cause-
lot of youth.
Yeah, last time I looked, every generation essentially doubled. Like you look at every generation, Gen
Yeah.
X, Gen Y, Gen Z. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's we've had conversations leading up to this. So there's kind of decisions that could be made about or for your future kind of without you being present as a member of your nation. Maybe maybe you're not on reserve, you're in Vancouver or anywhere BC. So is this something that's kind of
It's really emerging right now, only because so the Gitxala had to do with the mining rights, or the mining issue with free, prior, informed consent. But so, like I was talking about earlier, everything's incremental. So you get a little bit farther, a little bit farther. You just keep moving that goalpost.
Yeah.
And now, so we got all these bricks that affirm that we have mobility rights. It doesn't matter if we're on or off reserve. I could be in Italy. I can travel. I could do whatever.
and mobility is a pretty broad term, meaning like it's travel, it's like meaning like airplane, international.
Exactly.
It's driving. It's mobility is all movement, kind of in a
Exactly. It doesn't matter. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if like you're
Yeah.
health sick anywhere you are, right?
Okay.
You still
Yeah.
have that responsibility
Yeah.
to your territory.
Yeah.
And so now it's at a weird place now with DRIPA, which is the Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People,
Yeah.
or UNDRIP for federal. That's now legally enforceable. And so what that DRIPA is essentially a framework that all other laws are supposed to fall in line with. And so it's causing a lot of angst with like non-Indigenous people, because now they're going to have to look at how they're treating Indigenous people specifically. And there's certain articles in there that are really specific, especially like I mentioned, the free, prior, informed consent. That's going to deal a lot of damage to infrastructure projects, but also Article 18. Article 18 has to deal with that all Indigenous people have the right to choose representation for decisions that affect them. So no decision is made without you, essentially, with being
Okay.
involved,
Yeah.
right? So if you think about major infrastructure projects and how that ties back to Aboriginal title, where that's collective and for the benefit of everybody.
Yeah.
So why are they holding a singular above us, like being chief and council?
Yeah. Yeah. So like the I don't know if this actually applies, but like where I start thinking is a lot of people, especially with 2026 modern climate is housing can be quite difficult to access, and it's tricky for a lot of people. Housing is probably at its worst, and if there's one thing I know is some nations, and I will not say all, definitely not all, some nations are known to give land, build houses, or do things like that, and create space for its members.
Yeah.
And I think with this kind of call or culling of urban centers and rent prices and things like that, there may be an influx of indigenous people younger than us who want to go home because they have rights and titles and things like that. But maybe decisions were made about those infrastructures or things like, meaning like the housing that's there, or what's available, or businesses and things like that. Infrastructure is kind of like the foundation of a nation.
Yeah.
But things may be happening there without you that could kind of not benefit you or benefit you.
Yeah, like that's where it gets really tricky, only because I'm thinking really specifically. So on reserve, they have something called prevention funding.
Yeah.
Prevention funding is specifically for like preventing youth from going in care, right? It's supposed to up like services to stopgap solution for on reserve, but that's only specific for on reserve children. And so you look at that dichotomy. So just because my nieces and nephews are in the city, why can't they access those same services where they're getting like, food hampers and back to school things, and like some bands are really push that nation forward using those funds, where like mine's really small. I mean, I come from a small reserve of like 400 people. And there's not a whole lot of infrastructure up there.
So I have two more questions for you. I don't want this to feel daunting in any way. I really want it to be accessible because I love chatting with Ambrose, and he's full of information and good information of things that I love to like learn about, because it is tricky. So if there is a kind of a baseline of whether you want to call it information or rights or anything, is there something that you would like the youth to know about themselves, or is there something they can learn without having to be like afraid of being lost or not knowing? Is there something that they can access or read or learn about it?
Yeah, like I think UNDRIP or the DRIPA is a really great place to start. That's the Declaration of Rights. Only because it's the most recent. And I have a feeling that's going to shape a lot of decisions going into the future. And yeah, like where it gets really tricky, like you mentioned, identity, culture, place, like these are all markers, right? And we're all kind of being pushed into this title of being Indigenous, right? But being Indigenous is an administrative thing. So what I mean by that is there's a lot of money in like Indigenous politics. Like when I'm talking about this, I'm thinking like, organizations that get money to provide services. Right. So whether it's healthcare, children and family services, or whatever have you, like nation-to-nation agreements. So your band number or your status as an Indian gets tied to a funding formula. And so all these agencies are claiming your identity on their book, saying that they represent you, whether or not they do or not, just because like they operate within this area.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it gets really complicated because now you're dealing with like hundreds of millions of dollars.
Because this kind of ties into like corporations and things could identify themselves as a being in a sense, and it really changes how they operate, especially with human lives.
Definitely. Yeah. And that's the same structure as like the nonprofit structure in Canada. And most, if not all, Aboriginal organizations operate under that model. Interesting. In Canada. So it's basically a corporation.
Yeah. So that would be DRIPA, DRIPA, and UNDRIP, UNDRIP.
Yes.
Okay, so that's what our friend Ambrose here would share to kind of look into, and don't be afraid to not. I looked into quite a few things in my learning journey of post-secondary and things like that. And there were so many things I didn't understand. But once you kind of start firing some synapses and like you see a connection between certain words or certain things, it kind of clicks in.
Yeah.
And the youth are also so smart. This is why I'm also going like the next generation, they're on a different platform
Yeah.
than the previous before us. So I feel nothing but like extreme hope for they're supposed to excel beyond past
Yeah.
us. They're
Definitely.
supposed to be doing different and exploring new avenues compared to past generations.
Like this generation that's coming up next, like honestly, the last residential school here closed in '94.
Yeah.
And so now we're starting to see the first and second gens coming out of that. And that's really powerful, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, there's still that connection. Like I still have like my family still went through it, but yeah, we're just trying to make things better for the next people. And that's why all these court cases are super important, and just knowing the history and realizing that it's a story. Like we've been trying to speak the story for the last 50 years that we exist, and we're not going anywhere.
Absolutely. The truth is undeniable, and especially your truth and our truth is very unique and individual as well.
Yeah.
But multiple truths can kind of exist in the same time.
Definitely.
And that's the tricky part of existence. And then I guess my last question to you is if there's anything you would like to share with the youth, whether it's a piece of advice or to yourself, or any last messages you'd like to give to anybody specifically, or to the youth, or anything you'd like to share personally. In our closing question here, is there one more topic do you kind of like to discuss or anything like that?
Yeah, like I don't know, when people think about political advocacy, I really didn't think that's what I would get into at the time. And after a while, you start realizing that a lot of these decisions are made behind closed doors. And part of that's the trick, is trying to get in behind those doors. And I don't know, I really think you just have to be really curious on trying to figure out, okay, who are the people that are representing me? How did they get in that position? And who do they represent? Those are three major questions, right? And you look at that through, a traditional or a non-traditional lens.
Yeah.
Your chief and council, it could be your hereditary chiefs.
Yeah.
It could be an organization.
Yeah.
You look at the membership. How can you get a seat as part of a member within an organization, right? And then you can have your voice heard in those spaces.
Absolutely. Ambrose, it's such a privilege to hear you talk today. I love the information you share. I love your truth and stories that you share. It's been a privilege to have you on Culture Bytes. And is there anything you would like to plug or anything you'd like to share on our closing comments?
I had intrusive thoughts there.
It was a great conversation.
It went really well. Thanks for having me.
And I look forward to talking with you again. And if there's anything you'd like to anything you'd like to discuss in the future, I'm sure we'd love to have another conversations with you. It was
Awesome.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Ambrose. Take care,
Yeah.
and we'll talk to you guys soon.